The St. Louis Blues are about to be one of the most active teams in the 2026-27 offseason, with big changes coming to their core. And while Blues fans might fear that this team is going to do a full-on teardown, I actually think that there is a path for the St. Louis Blues to be competitive next year. So let's talk about how we fix the St. Louis Blues in 2026-27. And we're going to start, as always, with the guys running the show. GM Doug Armstrong is about to step down and pass responsibilities over to Alexander Steen, though he hasn't done that yet. It's set to happen on the 1st of July. So presumably that means that Armstrong is going to be running the upcoming NHL draft. And I don't necessarily mind that Armstrong is handpicking his successor after the success he's had as GM of the Blues, but I also don't think it's fair to give Steen all of the accolades and the demerits from the moves that Armstrong has made. He still has to carve out his own path, and we're not sure whether he's going to be a good GM or not. Their head coach is Jim Montgomery, returning to come for the title that Todd McClellan and Pete DeBoer have occupied for the last decade or so, of guys who will make your team great in the regular season and then flame out in the playoffs. Monty is a decent coach. He's shown that he can have success in the regular season, and he's also shown he can be outcoached dramatically in the playoffs. And he hasn't done anything to warrant being fired from the St. Louis Blues, but I also don't know if he's going to be long for this job, particularly if the Blues do decide that they want to rebuild. Last year, he kept a decently talented team in the playoff race down the stretch before they faded, and it was a team that remained mostly healthy throughout the year. But the reason, in my opinion, the Blues faded down the stretch and didn't really have it in them to go on a deep run is just because they're having a lot of those tweener guys. Talking about players like Dylan Holloway and Jordan Kyrou, who are legit top sixers, but neither of them's a top-line winger. Philip Broberg and Colton Parayko are top 4 guys, but not quite top pairing guys. And then Jordan Bennington is a clear number 1A guy, but whereas he used to be a number 1 load-bearing starter, now he's kind of up and down, and you need a good backup like Hofer to stabilize a team when he's in those slumps. And when you look at how the St. Louis Blues should slot out into their lineup if they bring everybody back next year, you can see where the holes are. Down the middle and on the back end, they don't have a number 1 defenseman, as I just mentioned, and they don't really have a number 2 center. They have a lot of very good wingers, Jordan Kyrou, Dylan Holloway, and Pavel Buchnevich, and Jimmy Snuggerud, I think, has it in him to potentially be a number 1 wing eventually, but there's just nobody in their lineup who's proven to be a potential number 2 center, and there's not really any prospects that they have who could be that. Obviously, Dalibor Dvorsky is the best hope for that. Justin Carbonneau is more of a wing, but I don't think it's really reasonable to expect him to be a number 2 center this year. The good news for the Blues is that they're not completely cash-strapped. They've got about $14 million in projected cap space for the offseason, and they don't have anybody big who needs a contract extension. And they also have 3 first-round picks this year, which is shocking, although they don't have a second-round pick in either of the next 2 drafts. Between all of that draft capital and their apparent willingness to move on from some forwards, namely Jordan Kyrou, who has come up very frequently, I think the Blues could be primed to take a run at some of the top-flight defensemen who might be available this offseason and not really have to give up too many assets. And the guy I'm looking at in particular is Morgan Riley of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I know Leafs fans are really down on Mo, but he's still a top-pairing defenseman right now. And I know the criticism is he can't really play defense, but he's great in the transition game and conducting from the back end. And I think if you paired him with a guy like Colton Parayko, that could be a very strong first pairing. You'd actually be saving a bit of money if you did a straight Morgan Riley for Jordan Kyrou swap. And moving off of Kyrou would also give Jake Neighbors an opportunity to carve out a role in the top 6, which I think he's ready for already. Now, for second line center, it's a little bit tougher, but I think that there's a guy who's going to be out there that the Blues could make a run for, and that's Vinny Trocheck of the New York Rangers. With all those draft picks that the Blues have and the Rangers looking to tear it down, you could easily get Vincent Trocheck for not a whole lot. And I think he would be a perfectly adequate center between maybe Buchnevich and Neighbors. Or if you wanted, you could move off of Buchnevich and maybe give Justin Carbonneau a chance to step into the top 6 right away next year. Another option that I would be interested in if I'm the St. Louis Blues is to actually take a couple of those draft picks and trade up in the draft to try and get up to around the number 5, number 6 slot, so you can get one of those really good defensive prospects. Like I said, the Blues have a lot of good young forwards, but they don't have as many promising young defensemen. I'm not as high on Adam Juracek as a lot of other people are. Logan Mailloux had a very rough first half to last season. and none of their other defensive prospects are even in the top 100. So I might try and see if I could maneuver my way up to pick a guy like Daxon Rudolph or Albert Schmitz if they're available. As for goalie, I do think that the Blues are going to move off of Jordan Binnington, and I'm not entirely opposed to that, given where he is right now and how much money he's making. And I think if there's a team out there who's desperate enough to take Jordan Binnington at this point in his career, you should do it. You'll probably need to get another number 1 A or B guy. For instance, if Sergei Bobrovsky does shake loose and you want to sign him for a couple of years, that's not a bad option. Though he's probably going to cost more money than you're comfortable paying him. And the rest of the goalies who are going to be on the market are just not very good. So it's really going to depend on if you think Joel Hofer can play 50 or 60 games or if you want him playing more close to 40. But regardless of what they do in goal, I'm excited to see what moves the St. Louis Blues make with their new general manager at the helm. They have a lot of capital to wheel and deal with, and some pretty good prospects like Carbono that I'm excited to see take the next step. With their 3 first-round picks, they could make a big splash and take a high-end prospect, or just pick 3 really good players and load up their pool. Either way, the St. Louis Blues have a lot of options, and that's very exciting for next season and the future.